Hare and Tortoise Recordings presents Odious Villains by Hong Mai Lien. Translated and edited by David Michael. Audio recording produced and narrated by Lawrence Watusi. Chapter 2. All of you owe me. Ong looked at the blood that was dripping down from his hand, and then he focused his gaze upon Meng, who was sprawled out on the floor screaming bloody murder. But his mind was still enveloped in mind-boggling pain, and his mentality was somehow also equivocally off, so that everything seemed to be a psychic illusion. Since no one was really sure if the owner of this body had died, or if the soul of this utterly weak child had long gone, and perhaps if someone had tried to revive the child body, it would have seemed considered a joke. Nevertheless, an arrogant person like him had now signed and agreed to live in such a weak body. The dagger had been stabbed thoroughly deep into Meng's thigh, as the trauma was very extensive, because it was stabbed with cruelty and arbitrariness, but it had been stabbed exactly into the artery. Though the body he had now possessed had stopped moving for a while and had been stiff, Ong's hands were still shaken as he mercilessly stabbed Meng. Anyway, I'm still alive, and although this body is quite weak, it's still acceptable, Ong sighed. While his body had been stiff, the past memories of the corpse childhood had flowed into his mind like a movie show. Ong? The name was not too fruity, as it could have still been used from this day onward. Ong stepped onto the wound on Meng's thigh, gazed down, and calmly said, "When you had beat me that time, there had been 2 strikes on my nuts. And with only what this dagger has done, it is not enough to put you out of your debt of me. Since those 2 strikes of yours had not only put me in great pain, but had also killed me." He strongly withdrew the dagger and spun it while enlarging the wound as Meng painfully shouted out. The sound was made as Aang used the dagger to stab him again, so that the dagger was stabbed exactly into the old wound without any deficiencies. The dagger and the wound's gap were perfectly mixed together, that it looked as if the dagger was turning back into its sheath. Even the best doctor could not have realized that the wound had been made twice. The face of Meng was as white as a sheet of bleached paper as he screamed out terribly and fainted. Who would have guessed that such an aggressive bully like him was to be frightened unconscious by Ong? "Ong!" Kian now had an inappropriate face. Such a student who had seen a frail waste of space in the school was now obviously not paying attention to his orders, and that drove Kian nuts. In the past, in front of him, Ong was usually subservient, and he had always obeyed all orders, and he had never dared to speak loudly, but now, Ong did not heed any attention. As Kian loudly roared and angrily said, "You already have the skills and spirit, a full set of balls now, don't you? It is obviously so, because you now dare to ignore my commands." Although Ong turned his gaze to Kian, he did not have any admirations towards him as usual, but seemed to have now despised him. "How has Master Kian taught us that one time?" Ong took back the dagger and was flipping it in his hand. "Mr. Kian used to say that this area belonged to the Immaculate 9 hoodlums, and that the only regulation in this place was to see who was the most cruel. If the one who was bullied had not dared to fight back, then no one would have felt pity for him. So Mr. Kian has persistently never counted on me. Now, I'm only doing as Mr. Kian is taught, but it seems that, Mr. Kian, that what is now happening, is it not pleasant to your eyes?" Kian was quite tall, at least around 6'5", and as strong as a retarded horse. Although he was not the cruelest among the Immaculate 9 hoodlums, he was the evilest. One of the Immaculate 9 hoodlums, he was always the one who had the most ideas. Moreover, his hobby was physiognomy, which was to study the human body. And it was said that he had perfected the physical dirty rain, Suwang Lean technique. which uses 666 cuts to perfectly skin his enemies, and again with that same technique to cut through all of their tendons, letting them crumble apart on the floor in a pool of their own blood. Kian looked at Ong differently and was speechless for a while. He was surprised for a moment and said, "That's right. I used to say it like that, but I had never seen them bully you. But today, you were the bully." Fatty, who was standing by his side, interrupted. "Mr. Kian, Louis, Meng, and Wang have just beaten Ong to death, and it was because they had picked a quarrel with him first." "Beaten to death? Why is he still alive in front of me if he was beaten to death?" Kian continued, "Fatty, you clearly know that I'm not fond of being cheated, and you also know the results of ones who have dared to cheat me." Ong coldly sighed. "It does not matter if you used to see me so or not. I only remember that when Mr. Kian had taught us, he usually said that the one who was bullied but had never dared to fight back was wasted, and that everyone would disregard him. But it is different for the bully. When one had bullied other people, one did not need to teach them about morality. If one was like that, then he could have not been a bully. Therefore, it does not matter if Mr. Kian used to see me or not, because you could now see me that I am bullying them, not them bullying me." Having finished saying so, Ong moved slowly toward Wang, who was shaking, and he laughed out loud, asking, "Your elder brother has just received 2 stabs, and he is now fainted. Being his younger brother, don't you want to take revenge?" Wang suppressed his desires with difficulty. No need. My elder brother, he's fine. Today's problem was my fault. Ong, I beg you, drop your dagger. All before it was just joking." "Joking?" Ong had a cold smile. "Your older brother has only beaten me 2 times. As for you, you had beaten me 16 times and stepped on me 7 times. Do you not see that my body is still bleeding? Not to mention that it really hurts. However, do not fret. I will not aim for your weak parts. Now, I don't want to kill you. At least, I don't want to kill you right now, because from now on, I'm going to gradually take back what you've taken from me before. Today, I just demand payment of today's debt, so don't worry. You are not going to die." "Stop, you little faggot chins!" Kian moved towards them, brandishing a hand towards Ong, but just as he started to move to stop him, Ong had already sent out 23 stabs to Wang, and they were a definite 23 stabs, neither more nor less, because Wang had beaten him with 16 fists and 7 kicks from before. The 23 stabs were made as fast as lightning, without aim. So many stabs in such a short time, that was so fast that normal eyes could not have possibly caught up. In the twinkling of an eye, Wang had become a bloody pulp as he screamed out terribly, looking down to see the bloody wounds. Such a fearful, insane situation like that was hard to be described by words. He kept screaming terribly, using his hands to stop the bleeding wounds. However, he could not stop them all. In a short time, his body was entirely covered with blood. 23 stabs within 2 seconds. "It was too slow," sighed Ong. "However, my blood flow is starting to be pumped normally now, and my hands are more stable." But what had made him surprised was that such a weak-looking body was not clearly weak at all. Actually, the owner of this body had trained himself every day because he did not want to be bullied, as he was only weak in mentality, not physically, though no matter how hard he had tried to practice, he had never dared to fight back, not even at least once. Ong felt satisfied, but Kian was terribly scared. 23 stabs within only 2 seconds. Other people would be scared too, but Kian was a little more scared because he was so familiar with the human body, and he clearly understood the 23 stabs from Ong, since they were too fast to be normal. Moreover, at first it looked like random stabs, but later the 23 stabs had all avoided Wang's vital organs and arteries. The speed was not only terribly fast, but it was very, very precise. Was he the coward, Ong, who had been rejected? This youth was now like a big, furiously retarded tadpole. Although he was not too strong, His cold heart and cruelty had now completely made its debut. Kian felt that the Ong in front of him was being different, that he was no longer a cowardly orphan. You? How could you? When saying this, Kian did not realize that his voice was shaking. If another disciple had shown such power, Kian would have seen it as normal. However, this was Ong, not anyone else. 2 seconds for 23 stabs would have been disregarded by an enlightened person. Not only the common practitioners, even a body infliction techniques practitioner would see it easy to send out 60 stabs within 1 second after he reached the first basic stage. Although Kian was strong as a retarded horse, he could not have practiced any special secret tech techniques himself, so he chose physical training. He had reached the 3rd basic stage not too long ago, and within 1 second he could have sent out more than 200 fists, which were way too fast for anyone to be able to catch his speed with their naked eye. Mr. Kian has taught me very well, Ong suddenly said. Mr. Kian used to teach that if I had wanted to be fast in fighting, then there would be no shortcuts, but only in training patiently. Every day when I came home, I had practiced for more than 2 hours. At first it was in taking out and throwing knives, but later it was to stab them into wooden pieces. And finally it was to stab into all the dangerous and weak spots of the wooden body. Mr. Kian used to teach me the spot's position, and when I had gotten home, I'd mark them all on the wooden body. However, now I do not need such kinds of toys because I have already kept them all in my mind. When saying this, the strong manner of Ong made Kian further shaken. Was this child really Ong? Why was he becoming more and more different? Ong looked at Kian's face, smiled, and continued. If Mr. Kian does not believe me, I will welcome you to my house. The wooden pieces and wooden body are still right there. Every day I've spent 2 hours in training without any interruptions, whether it was raining or storming. Kian doubtfully said, But at that time he was saying as An then interrupted, I did not resist by any means at that time, and I was a coward at that time, right? It is not so different because I have suffered enough. I'm an orphan, and I have no one to rely on. I used to think that if I could suffer a little, it would be fine because it was only physical pain. However, lately those bastards have become more and more intolerable. They now not only want to beat me down, but also kill me. I have heard that those bastards usually communicated with the Central North Casket hooligans, but now they are prepared to join a clan known as the Loony Tyrants. They're just teenagers. He turned to Louis and disregarded Kian. People had said that if you wanted to join that clan, you had to kill a person. But those bastards did not care to kill anyone, and they also did not care to go out, so they used me as their training tool. If it is like that, then why should I suffer more? Long suffering that will eventually cause my death? He looked at Kian. I was an orphan. I wanted to live, not to die, and I was a total coward. Because I just wanted to live. And so now it is the same. I still want to live now, so my only choice is in resistance. Once I resist, it must be complete and thorough. From now on, how anyone treats me, I will pay them back twice as much. Kian was totally surprised, but he did not know what to say. The eyes of Ong really shook him. When Louis was turning to run away, he heard Ong's voice. Already leaving? Have you paid me yet?